Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Open Network User Group podcast. I'm Mark Tierney. I'm ONUG CTO, and today we're going to visit with key members from the ONUG Policy as Code Working Group and see what's happening on that team. Will it be worth it? Are you worth it? Of course you are. You want to be happy. I talked to ChatGPT today, and they said that what makes IT professionals, or it said what makes IT professionals happy, challenging and interesting work and collaborative, supportive team environments. That is everything that happens at ONUG on the ONUG Collaborative. So this is going to obviously make you happy. ChatGPT said it would. All right, but before I get to my guests, ONUG Spring 2023, it's going to be a hybrid event. It's going to be in my hometown, Dallas, Texas, May 17th and 18th at Union Station. Like I said, in Dallas. It's going to be great. Come join the ONUG community of global 2,000 companies, enterprise architects, cloud providers, thought leaders, as we demonstrate the tenets of enterprise cloud, networking, DevOps, DevSoc, whatever. You can go to onug.net to register for the event today. Use the promo code ONUG podcast, and you'll get a truckload of savings. I think it's like 20% off. All right, so that's it. All right, I've got a really powerhouse lineup, and the reason why I have a powerhouse lineup is because the team, the Policy as Code Working Group, is just that. It's full of powerhouse people. I've got, and you guys just wave when I say your name. So I've got Alex Schulman-Pellig from E&Y. She's Managing Director of Cloud Security and Practice Leader for the Americas. I've got Peter Campbell. You guys know Peter. He's been on the podcast a bunch. He's Senior Director of Cloud Security and Strategy and Engineering at Cigna. Xiaobo Long. Xiaobo is the Global Head of Network Segmentation Tools Engineering at Citi. Ilya Sumuni, the Cloud Security Innovation Lead at E&Y. And Don Duet, he's the CEO and co-founder of Concourse Labs, and he is also the chair of the Policy as Code Working Group. Most of our listeners also know and viewers know Don as well, because he was previously a co-chair with Peter on the Automated Cloud Governance Working Group. All right, Don, let's start with you, pal. The interesting part about ONUG and how working groups happen, they're often driven down by the ONUG board and the ONUG steering committee. And often, these things get tested at privately held sessions at ONUG conferences. And I just remember fondly remembering a session that you and Xiaobo led at the last two conferences on the topic. Tell the audience, what are you seeing? What are you seeing from your seat on the big drivers? What have you heard at the conference? What are you hearing in the industry of what's driving Policy as Code?
Yeah, sure. No, thanks, Mark. And it's great to be here with such an amazing group of people, that make up the team and the working group at ONUG. Surprisingly or not, the world is investing deeply in tech, and businesses of all industries and all shapes and sizes are building, more and more of their business and their operations based on software and data. And one of the challenges that come with that is, guess what? That creates a lot of complexity as people look to move from more on-premise models to embracing different cloud services and many aspects of next generation technology, cloud native solutions, et cetera. All this from a business perspective just creates more and more challenges of how do you be able to ensure that you can run, operate, and move fast without breaking things, and how can you really ensure that you're building kind of capabilities over time that let automation take place to ensure that your business applications and services and data sets are both secure and they're well designed. And so that really is kind of where we see the genesis of the whole Policy as Code movement, if you would. And that there's, I think, increasing recognition that with the kind of approach that many businesses are taking, both in terms of the velocity of their business and their technology, the desire to become much more innovative and more agile, all that adds up to lots of things changing in lots of different places all the time. And so one of the core use cases that we're seeing that's being, coming out of both the ONUG kind of community and in general around Policy as Code is how do you really use Policy as Code as a basis to help you automate the controls that you need to run and operate your environments safely. And that's a big part of the focus of the working group. But I would say it'd be remiss for me not to state that Policy as Code is still, I think, being defined, and a big part of our focus within the group is really trying to bring together people to answer the question of what is policy as code, what should it mean to people, and how do you apply it in kind of a complex enterprise.
Yeah, that makes sense. The definition part is key. I think I sat in your first session, Jiabao. I sat in the very first session that you led at ONUG Spring 2022, and I said, policies code, more questions than answers. And I appreciate, Jiabao, your point of view, because you want to get things done. Like every time I hear you talk about policies code, you're all about how we get this these solutions into our enterprises to reduce toil and just make things work. Tell me a little bit about your passion around that topic, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so I'm very passionate about policies code. We think it's very strategic. So before I moved to this data center team in City, I was doing cloud with AWS and Google, where we already have solutions to do the guardrail and to do the compliance reporting, because everyone is following the same language, right? AWS API or Google or Azure. But when we do the on-premise, for example, when we do segmentation, we need to deal with a variety of technology stacks, network SAL from different routing switch vendor, the firewalls, right, and some zero trust, right? So all these solutions need to play together, and we need to be compliant with some standard for both for our internal network security standard as well as external regulators. So how do we prove in an automated way to say we're compliant? How do we testify our controls stays valid and is doing what we expect it to do? So I think policy as code is the only way that we can automate this governance process and make sure that we can be compliant in a more automated way.
All right, so Jiabao used the compliance term. Alex, I'm going to you next, because when my history as technology exec, mostly an infrastructure person, I hear the words compliance, attestation, things like that, I get the shakes a little bit. I think about, I'm sitting in front of the auditors, right? I've got to tick and tie off controls. And I think one of the things that I'm passionate about here, once I got over my anxiety of compliance and realized that the only way to deal with these things is head on, right? And not pretend like it's going to just happen by magic. My hope for policies, code solutions is sort of this ubiquity, end-to-end kind of solution, that it's not just about implementation, but it's about these other things that Jiabao was talking about, like how do we manage compliance and governance end to end? I think you're in a good seat to talk about that. I'd love to get your thoughts on it and anything else you want to throw out there. But give me some feedback on my anxiety problem.
Yes, you're spot on. Compliance is very difficult to manage, and most of the regulators want to see that organizations have solid policies and then they're implementing them. And this is exactly what policies code is all about. Because policies that are written on paper are not sufficient to protect us, because they're still on paper. Those who are attacking us are not reading them, and they're not trying to be compliant with these policies. The only way to actually enforce these policies is to have them implemented as code, because otherwise you're spot on. I'm also afraid of compliance, because if it is not automatically managed, it is very difficult to prove that you're compliant. So compliance as code, policy as code, these are the mechanisms to actually implement the policies that were originally written on paper. And this connection between policies that we have written on paper and our environments that are now noisy, dynamic, constantly changing. Policies code is connecting between these areas. And this is why policies code is so critical. That's the future. There is no other way to manage these environments. And I hope that over time, this is what will reduce everyone's stress around compliance, because we'll be able to manage this automatically with policies code. So great.
All right, I'm not this smooth, and Peter Campbell knows I'm not this smooth, but it's a good segue, and we didn't practice this. But Peter, I know you think about things in from a very practical point of view at Cigna, and I know your I don't know, concern's not the right word, but you've brought up the very real issue of scale, right? And you know, as we look at solutions in the policy as code space, it's such a broad category. There's so many ways to approach it. Tell me about your concerns. And by the way, if I'm wrong, tell me. But you know, are there concerns about being able to scale these solutions down the road, and how do you feel about that?
No, well, I think, you know, being able to operate at scale is, as you said, is super important. And I think, as Alex said, to kind of amplify what she said, if policy can make security simpler and more streamlined and more understandable, then it's going to help with the scale problem. So when you start to think about the number of different diversity of workloads, cloud environments, on-premise environments, just the amount of policy that needs to be sort of uniformly applied, and then, you know, managed at scale. You know, we've been looking at, you know, some architectures where we're you know, kind of trying to prove out, you know, policy as code as a way to enforce say zero trust data protection. You know, these architectures have to scale, but also we need to ensure that we're, you know, keeping it simple as well, so that, you know, the consumers that are responsible, you know, the platform teams and the development teams that are responsible to enforce security policy can do that in a way that's, you know, understandable, and it's done, you know, uniformly across the organization. So it's a huge topic, but it's a tremendous, you know, if we can get there, as Alex said, it's going to be very exciting as I see this evolving over the next few years.
Yeah, so when you start talking about scale, Ilya, when we were working on the early days, and by the way, we'll be coming out with collateral here very soon that the public can see. Yeah, Alex, you were passionate about a few things. I'm sorry, Ilya, you were passionate about a couple of things, if I recall, during the building of the team charter. Correct me if I'm wrong, but if I remember right, you one of the things that you were hoping that we'd wrap our arms around as a team down the road, or you know, having to do with standards and data models and things like that inside a policy as code framework. Is that right? Do I remember that correctly? And if so, like, tell me why you think that's so important.
Yeah. I to add all the topics we talk about policies, code, standards, and kind of coming to the agreement on definitions is very important. So we all talk about the same thing. So I think what we see in industry, people say policies code, but they mean different things. So I think one of the purposes of this group is to come to this agreement, what actually policies code mean for us and for the industry, right? And take it forward. And I think it will be very valuable for everybody. So we can kind of speak to the same vocabulary. But in terms of standards, I think what is important, when you have the standard, you can start coding around it, right? So people have the same understanding. So when we start taking from the concepts of policies code, scale, and kind of all these intents we talk about, we can start laying layers of design and code and solutioning, so that at the end, we have a kind of clear connection from the intent expressed as a policy to the implementation that we can actually run against certain environments. And that's how we can reach the scale, to Peter's point, right? But this requires a good bit of work, as we discovered, doing it internally and with clients. So it seems to be that we need to get a lot of discussions and agreements, and then start kind of coding around it, making sure that we follow the good processes around actual implementation. And then we get to these outcomes that will be repeatable and consistent, right? And reusable. And I think this is what we're all working towards. Kind of this is kind of my thoughts. I hope it resonates to what we try to put in the charter, right? So it is really align what we set out to do, and we can continue down this path.
No, that makes sense. So, and Don, you know, one of the things I appreciate, of course, I work at ONUG, but one of the things I appreciate about ONUG, all my biases aside, is being a member-led community. You know, the consumers are really leading the conversation in partnership, of course, with the suppliers. But we're trying to be part of a connected community. We're not out here to invent something new, right? I think, you know, everyone on this team's been pretty passionate about that. There are certainly standards that exist in the policies code space. I would argue that they're not always. I've used the word term already, sort of ubiquitous across an entire framework, and I think that's how I feel like we're operating, trying to fill those gaps, create the standards that Ilya was referring to, right down to what you're leading right now, which is I'm kind of blocking and tackling, but working on a glossary of terms, right? That people can understand. Tell us about what is happening with the policies code playbook at this point.
Yeah, I think as the other members have kind of commented on, I mean, policy as code is a word or a phrase, and when you dip beneath the surface, there's a lot of things to really unpack, and there's lots of different ways people would express things that they would point to and say that's policy as code, like I don't know, a cloud guardrail, or kind of some form of a compliance solution. So there's a lot here that we see kind of in the industry, and we're seeing kind of as a group of opinionated and passionate kind of technologists that are trying to help solve for this. That the first thing we need to help people with, including ourselves, is just getting that definition of what are the terms here, what are the relationships that would exist, stepping back and making sure, to your point, we're not trying to invent new things, we're not trying to step on existing standards, but how do you take the things that do exist and get them into a methodology that hopefully will help people? Because there's a lot of people out there in the world that are saying, I really want to figure out how do I help my organization embrace this architecture, this strategy called policy as code, but how do I do it? And so that's really kind of the objective of our playbook, is to try and give people a sense of this is what we, as a collection of experienced professionals, have see and what we kind of think is a good way of helping both understand the space and understand some of that substructure aspects of what really is involved in managing, maintaining, and operating a policy as code program, and give people a good guide for where to get started. And then we'll see. We're going to look to get a lot of feedback from the community, starting at the event in Texas, on what should be the next step, what should come beyond that. But that's our first goal, is to try and get that kind of playbook built out to help educate a bit more of what we see. And then hopefully, for people that are really interested in trying to start to be building a program for managing a policy as code initiative in their organization, that this could be we think could be a very helpful starting point.
Nice. So a couple things. First, I'd like to say that when an ONUG member says that the team members are opinionated, that's a compliment, right? So let's make sure we're clear on that. These are compliments, team. Okay, so it's all good. Alex, from your seat, though, in the position of E&Y in particular, you're casting a wide net. Maybe I'd love to hear a little bit about your point of view from, not that you could talk to specific clients or anything, but do you see any specific areas that that you're in your universe that people are like dying to get first? Is there something that okay, this is great, Don and Ilya want to drill down and get a glossary terms and data models and really yeoman's work that needs to be done. But sometimes I see people like Jabo and Peter's like, that's great, but I need to implement network policy. And need to get it done quickly. Like what are the things that you're seeing people are pushing on sooner than later?
Yes, thank you. So let me share my personal opinion, because it is very difficult to speak on the behalf of E&Y in general.
Thank you. Yep.
My personal opinion is that we have wonderful tools. Policy as code has evolved, and we have many amazing solutions for policy as code and many different instances. And this is what we are trying to align through this glossary, because we have policy in a platform provided by the cloud providers. We have policies as code as part of security tools. We have policy as code as an independent policy management infrastructure. So we already have many technological solutions that engineers, as ourselves, are super excited to adopt and implement. But I also think that we need to do several things. First, agree on the terminology, and then raise the several levels up inside our organizations. We need these policies code to be accepted during audit or regulatory reviews as attestations. So that
why would it? Hold on, let me interrupt. I'm going to stir things up here a little bit. Why would it not be accepted? Like, what would be the drivers that someone would not accept? These types of solutions. What's in the way? I guess.
So first, let's discuss how this is being done today. Most traditionally, audit processes will take organizational policies written on paper and then apply them. And then there are different interpretations, and they're checking that this is being implemented appropriately. We want to simplify this process, both for auditors and those who are actually building these systems. So instead of people asking questions and verifying and collecting opinions and views, we'll be able to review policy as code as an attestation. If it is implemented and applied to all of the environments, that's our attestation that the policy is implemented. But today, this is still not the mainstream of our review processes. Yes, we are implementing this where possible, but because not all of the environments today have implemented policy as code, this cannot be defined as a standard process for everyone. And because, for example, in many cases, we're starting with cloud. This is not yet implemented for all the environments. So both as auditors and those who are being audited, we cannot have this as part of our mainstream process yet, but this is where we need to go. Once implemented, this will make all the discussions easier. And this is the next step of policy as code, where it is used for risk management, where it is used for regulatory discussions and attestations. And it will save time for everyone involved. But the first step, and this is what this working group is doing, is to agree on the terminology so that all of us will be speaking the same language and will agree on how we're approaching this. And we will agree what are the different levels of policy as code, because it is very critical to define this, right? Policy as code for firewalls is not the same as policy as code for infrastructure as code deployment in the cloud. And that's what we're doing as a working group right now.
All right, I'm going to jump on that. Jeba, I'm going to go to you on this. The world, we're not living in vacuums here. We're living in multi-cloud, hybrid cloud, cloud in a box. 5 flavors of sort of on-demand infrastructure and platform and software as a service, security service. Are you looking at these solutions differently across the sort of pantheon of platforms, infrastructure, solutions, or is it possible to do a one-size-fits-all? I see you're on mute, so but is there a way to attack this problem, one-size-fits-all across these platforms?
So firstly, I would like to differentiate policy as code, the policy decision point, from the orchestrator. So today we could have multiple orchestrators. So for example, on Prime, we have orchestrator to orchestrate all the firewalls, and we have another orchestrator to orchestrate all the routers from a single vendor, and a cloud has a different orchestrator. However, policy engine is define a policy and help with a policy decision. Then we can translate this into different orchestrator for policy enforcement point. So I think the policy as code is doable for multiple technologies. So the chance is there. And you ask a very interesting question, because we wanted to use policy as code for compliance, right? And what makes the auditors not to accept it? So from our experience with auditing team, they want the full transparency. How did you export the data? How did you prove that this is the time you exported the data and show all this evidence? So if we can use the policy as code to provide such transparency, this is our inventory. This is how we model the data. This is how we use the data to drive the policy decision. And those are the logs to prove that our controls are in place. Then I think we will have a very good chance that the auditors will like it. Yeah, this will make their life easier and our life easier.
Yeah, but I can add to that, to Jaba's point. I've supported multiple audits while being at EY. So kind of, Mark, translate to your point is that it should be reasonably self-explanatory how we get from policy written on paper to the code we measure, right? If auditors may not have advanced expertise in technology, but if we show this in clear terms, how we arrive at the conclusion, I think auditors will accept that as evidence, right? And to simplify this process of audit, that we have another chance of using policies code as actually audit simplification approach also. It will be clear how we're arriving from kind of a high-level policy to coding in the AWS Azure, right? There may be another benefit actually we can achieve by kind of going through this kind of a design, unpacking this approach.
I think that's an
Peter,
important point, Ilya. I was going to just add on to having that, common vocabulary or language between, compliance, risk, and audit teams, and sort of this, shifting up to kind of simplify, the assurance process. I mean, that's good for everyone, as far as it, reduces friction, it simplifies security, and it makes us, all more secure. So I think that's
perfect.
Yeah, I just wanted to put in my own 2 cents on this one as well, because I think, from the audit perspective, from the auditor or the regulator, what's going to be, I think, always required is that there's evidence and proof that you were able to do things independently, right? So that, if the same person who wrote the policy as code is the same person that's providing or managing the system that it's introspecting or it's, kind of defining compliance over, then that's probably going to be a problem. And if you have hundreds of teams in your environment and everybody kind of manages policy differently, well, that's probably going to be a different problem for the regulator. So I think, a big part of kind of why is policy as code so hard sometimes to get it translated into, value from the perspective of simplifying and reducing audit is, it requires really kind of some degree of standards of how you do it, some degree of principles of like how you make sure there's segregation of duties and responsibilities and independence of the actual code, because the code is doing all the legwork, which is great to reduce toil, but it's still going to be held to those same standards of, is it independent, is it trustable, and do you manage it in a way that's really kind of validating that it should be trusted.
All right, I can say this because I don't have a real job anymore. I work at ONUG and I do podcast stuff. But let's be honest, Peter and Jabo. No, you guys won't be honest. You're too nice. I feel like there's too much check the box kind of stuff that goes on in the controls and compliance space. We're sometimes getting down to the lowest common, denominator. And my hope for policy as code is that we'll raise the bar. We'll raise the bar of what policy implementation looks like, what our policies will get better because we will have more automated processes. Anyone can jump on this because I'm stirring the pot and trying to start a fight, but I feel like there's been a lot of check the box kind of stuff going on in this space. Alex, I see you laughing. Tell me I'm wrong.
That's the goal. Shabo said we want transparency, right? I think both the auditors and the teams that are being audited want transparency. It is just today they do not always have the tools. Once they will have the tools, I think it will be easier and it will be less check the box, because yes, we'll be checking the box, but we'll have confidence in the data that we are getting. So this is why we're investing in this space so much, because it will give confidence both to the auditors and those who are audited. Because after all, audit, that's a helpful process, even for the teams that are doing the engineering, because no one wants to hide any gaps, right? It is just sometimes people don't know about them because they don't have the tools to see them.
There you go. And that's to me, that's a quality issue that this could serve. It should serve. And particularly on, and anyone jump in on this, but particularly on, day two, right? We tend to put policy in place and we do it well. I think even in our manual processes, we do it well the day of implementation. And that's where the risk begins, right? That's where drift can happen. That's where, our observability and visibility on policy change, starts to happen. Am I wrong? You know, Xiaobao or Peter, I'd love to hear your opinions on this, but
no, I think as teams, I was just going to say, as teams are becoming more and more agile, right? There's, you know, that you may have heard the term, you know, you build it, you know, you run it, right? And that's kind of also you secure it, right? But as teams are becoming more and more agile and the pace of business is increased, there's more and more of a need for, you know, centralized security policy, you know, in a way that these agile teams can adopt those and enforce security policies, you know, kind of universally. In these, you know, and in a way, it kind of distributes security, right? And it empowers the engineering teams to do things in a secure way. So those are some of the big, you know, opportunities I think that that we see.
Yeah. But Peter,
Xiaobao, how about you?
Yeah. So I don't think policy is a code, is a one-time like a screenshot to prove we're compliant. That's all. It's also continuous monitoring. And policy as code as a technology enable us to do this continuous monitoring to catch up with the changes. For example, this weekend, if we push a change to our network, what will be the impact to our application? What is the impact to the security? So this will allow us to do sound and safeness as well from operational side.
That's really interesting, Xiaobao, when you think of like digital twins and those types of technologies where you're able to actually, you know, validate the policy on a you know, digital likeness of the true environment, right? I mean, those are some interesting things that you could do.
Yeah.
Alex, I think we cut you off. Jump in, Alex.
No, thank you. It's great.
Oh no, I'm sorry. It was Ilya. I'm sorry, Ilya. You were trying to jump in on something. Sorry about that.
Well, you know, thank you, but it was good for Xiaobao to mention that, because I'm thinking that there are a lot of policy engines already in place by different companies, different tooling, different organizations. So maybe our challenge is not just create a centralized policy engine or policy system, right? But sort of orchestration of the systems that serve common purpose, right? Because we cannot displace other things. AWS has their own policy engine built in, right? And so on. So what we can do, maybe have intelligent coordination and orchestration of these tools to serve certain outcome. I think it will be something that we can consider as a fairly successful kind of target for us to achieve, right? And it's similar to what identity systems are doing. They're looking more like orchestration or coordination about different identity systems. We can take similar approach, right, to policies and use Access as a kind of almost like a mental model complementing policies.
Exactly. You need both. And like Xiaobao mentioned, both the orchestrator and the policy decision point. And to provide this definite attestation, you actually need the data from both. So this is why we need to use these different instances of policy as code that we have available, but then also connect this to a high level, policy decision point.
All right, I'm gonna stir it up some more. Here we go. Security and network policy. That's exciting. It's exhilarating, right? But there's more. There's other policy out there. Is that not right? Like, are there not administrative policies that also get served by these solutions? You know, even right down to, you know, who can stand up instantiations of virtual servers or storage or whatever. I mean, these are policies too, right? Will they be governed, and should they be governed the same way through these same type of policy management solutions, or is that different? Don,
so,
you want to take
I think I'd love to answer that and hear, you know, the other points of view as well. But I think even just coming back a little bit to, can, you know, policy as code change the bar? Obviously, and hopefully in a raising construct.
Right.
You know, one of the things is it's code. So, you know, code is portable. Code can be written in lots of places. So, you know, one of the challenges that most enterprises have is that if you want to manage risk is not a flat conversation. It's a very contextual discussion. You know, what does this application do? What are the types of controls that it should be subject to? What are the threats that it may have? So policy as code offers the opportunity to really imagine that you can get to where you don't have one policy, you may have thousands of policies, and you may have thousands of policies in some cases that are designed specifically for individual workloads or individual applications, or to your question, like how to grant or who should be allowed to have administrative access to, which of your applications. So I think it really does provide for both an encompassing perspective in the sense that it's not just purely about security. Resiliency, perfect example. We see many clients of ours using policy as code to provide both security assurance and resiliency assurance. Our database is being backed up, are the backups in different parts of the cloud provider's availability zone. So in case there is a big outage, you're not sitting there thinking, oh, gee, unfortunately, nobody checked and made sure that we were keeping things resilient. But I think the main kind of point I want to make is that the point of being software really kind of opens the jar to saying we don't have to think about security as the 10 commandments that have to be, like those are the common things everybody can agree on in a world where everything is different and there's tremendous diversity. And we can move hopefully towards a world where there are more people participating in the creation of that policy content, but therefore it's also getting much more specific. It's getting to where it's truly protecting each application or each thing, whatever you want to call it, in a way that's been designed for that. But it's still scalable. That can still, you can operate that in a way that's not going to cost you, 90% of your people working on this. That to me is the premise and the opportunity that I think, we're all trying to struggle. I think the industry is trying to struggle for, like, how do you get there? What's the right path towards that goal?
Sure. All right. Listen, we're getting close to the end. I want to give everybody a chance to wrap up. So I'm going to go around the horn and ask you, if what will make you happy? If there's one thing out of a great policy as code solution, what is it that will make you and or your clients happy? What do you want to prioritize? Alex, you're good on your feet. I went to you first.
Thank you. Just this ability to use policy as code, for example, for audit. Or both as auditor and as a person who wants to prove that everything is implemented appropriately. And this ability to extract the policy and then show that it was applied to all the resources, and this is why we're compliant, I think this will achieve an amazing vision and will save huge amount of time for everyone involved. So I'm looking forward to seeing this broadly adopted in the industry.
Nice. All right, Peter.
I would say a way to distribute, a definitive, policy source of truth from a central location out to all the different disparate tool chains across the enterprise.
Excellent. Ilya, what's going to make you happy? Ilya, can we make you happy? That's what I want to know.
Yes, possibly.
I knew you were going to be the
But
tough
I want
one.
to piggyback on Peter's answer. So I think interoperability across different vendors and tools will make us as a consulting company happy because we can serve multiple clients, right? And show that different tools can serve some purpose. They all have different capability, of course, right? But we have sort of a common, not common denominator, but a common platform to bring different value to multiple clients, but still achieving similar outcome. I think for us it will be, very beneficial as a kind of independent provider. I think Peter is not into that because it seems to be that different vendors look at this differently, but having common vocabulary, common outcome, common mechanics that we can actually look at different at the available outcome, I think will be very beneficial in my opinion, right?
Excellent.
Totally agree.
Xiaobao, what's going to make you happy if we deliver something to the industry over the next 12 to 18 months? What's going to make you the happiest?
So I'm usually a happy person, although the work is hard. But if we can have this reporting capability built on policy as code to start with, I think that is a lower hanging fruit for everyone, and to show we can use policy as code for compliance as report as a service. That will make me even happier.
Nice. Now, Don, I can't imagine you being any happier than leading this team, right? It's a pretty powerful group that you've got here that you're chairing over. But nonetheless, I know something will improve your position and posture. What is it?
Well, no, I mean, as given given my role in the group, I think getting anything done will make me happy. And I think given the quality of the team that we have, I know whatever it is that we get done is going to be, really high quality and impactful. My general answer to your question is, I think, what I would find the most valuable coming out of the work that we're doing is if we, do get people to think a bit more about this strategically, right? Think that this is going to be really important. As I mentioned at the beginning, the world is digitizing at an amazing rate. Companies are investing more and more of their people time and dollars in building more and more complex software. And one of the most important aspects of policy as code, in my opinion, is really helping offset some of that inflationary cost, right? How much time do your people spend on compliance and on just, validating that things are working from an assurance perspective? That's time that, frankly, if we can help give back because it can be moved to machine time, that's fantastic. But I think it does require a little bit of a horizontal view where you got to think a bit strategically about, okay, this is not like I just turn this on or I just buy something and plug it in. I got to think about this strategically, as you've heard from everybody else on the group in the panel.
Excellent. Listen, I just want to say thanks to everyone for taking the time to be on the podcast with me today. It's a great opportunity for the audience to see the caliber of people that are part of the ONUG collaborative. And yeah, clearly this is just a powerhouse group with incredible backgrounds and a lot to contribute to the community. So thank you to Don, Xiaobao, Alex, Peter, and Ilya for being with me today. Again, don't forget about ONUG Spring 2022. You can go to onug.net and register. You can use that promo code ONUG podcast to save a truckload of money. And we will see you on the next ONUG podcast. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, team.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, everyone.